The Media Center for Art Education and Technology, a service of the Monterey County Office of Education, along with the Herald Live, presents Prep Nation. Now to your hosts, Dave Kellogg and John Devine.
Welcome to Prep Nation. I'm Dave Kellogg alongside John Devine. It's week 9 of the regular season, and we've got a big physical matchup coming up this week, and that's Seaside against Hollister. The last time we checked in with Seaside, they were coming off a huge win over Salinas, in which you said they looked as good as any team has this year.
In my opinion, that was the best performance all the way around, defense, offense, special teams, that I'd seen from any program this year. And again, it was just one game, and even Coach Al after the game said, "Guys, I don't know where this came from." And I said, "You got to bottle this."
Yeah.
Because they just flat out dominated Salinas. Now the problem is they've had a week off. And if you talk to Coach Avila, which we did earlier today, he mentioned, that's the last thing we wanted was a week off, because we looked like we finally hit our stride.
Well, they had gotten off to a kind of so-so start. They were 3-3. They had a lead against Aptos, I believe, and got overwhelmed in the second half. They looked good against Wilcox, which is a top team up in the South Bay. But we just had the feeling this wasn't going to be the year for Seaside.
Well, and he talked about that too. He goes, "I don't know what kind of a team I have." He goes, "They're so up and down. One minute," he goes, "we've had flashes where we've looked good, and other points where we've looked awful. But in the Salinas game, it all kind of came together."
Yeah. Well, let's hear what Coach Al Avila had to say today.
So, Coach, what got into this team 2 weeks ago in that 34-5 win over Salinas? That was one of the most impressive efforts I've seen all season by any team.
Well, John, I don't know. It's something we've been looking for. They showed them before the game. We were sort of saying, "Man, I don't know if I have a good feeling," and it just, I don't know. I was in shock the first quarter, really watching these guys play like that.
And it's kind of snowballed to the next 3 quarters.
Yeah, it just got better and better. And the thing was, we showed flashes of that all year.
Right.
We've played in spurts, and then we look average, and we look great, and we look average and below average. So they looked really good the whole game.
Now, defensively, you've struggled a little bit against the run this year, but That wasn't the case 2 weeks ago. Did a light just go on?
I think so. What happened was, as playing Wilcox and Aptos, those power teams, we had spurts where we shut them down, and then we went back to applying a lot of pressure. We applied about 100% pressure every play. We were bringing people from somewhere, and I think that got them in the groove.
Now, when you have an effort like that, do you want to buy like you've had this past week?
No. And in our practice last week, because we've never really historically been good after a bye week, so the way we were going, I was really hoping we played again. So we're going to see how we do it this Friday, because practice has been okay, but we just we had that spark going.
Now, San Benito, they're coming off their best effort of the year, and again, another team that ran for over 300 yards last week. So here we go again, facing another run-oriented team.
Right. They run it real well, and they run that wing T. They're very disciplined. Their offensive line come off the ball really, really fast, really low. The quarterback is the scary guy. He runs, and you think the back's off the ball, and all of a sudden he's taking off down the field.
And that was going to be my next question. What concerns you in watching film about the Baylors? Because this is about the time of year where they start to turn it up a notch.
Right. Well, the physicality, and we've always felt over years, us and them are always the most physical teams in the county, and they're running. They run that ball. The quarterback is the key man. He's really scary. He pulls it. He goes. That offense goes because of him. And in the last game, he was throwing the ball pretty good too.
Really? Okay. Now, Coach, you've been here for over 25 years as a coach. Do you still enjoy it as much as you did, a couple decades ago? Because it has changed. There's more expectations. There's more pressure. Some of it which you've brought on yourself by this, the efforts you've had this year, the titles.
Right. There's pressure from the outside because when we lose a few games, everybody's Seaside's done. But the thing is, I think I enjoy it, but it's different. The kids now are different. You have to really be. They wear me out a lot more than they did in the past. Got to be on them 24/7. But yeah, I enjoy it, because if I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't be here.
Sure.
And so I do it. It's not for football. I do it for other reasons. But football is just like I told you before. It's just a push hook to get them in and then get them with all the other good stuff.
And before we get out here, I got a couple quick questions from other people in your organization. What's it like coaching with your son Matt now for the last 8 years?
Man, truly a blessing. It's funny. Last 2 games, I watch him on the field, and I'm watching him walk on the field, and I'm watching him work. And I say, man, that's my son. I'm so proud to be out here with him, watching him practice. It's just such a good feeling to share that with somebody you love, and that he grew up with you, and he grew up on the field. You coach him, now he's next to you. Man, I tell you, it's not a better feeling.
Yeah. Now, he had a question for you. I guess he runs the offense.
Right.
You kind of run the defense. Can you stop his offense?
Yes, Matt. For me, because I know how Matt does, so he's predictable in a lot of things. So I told him, I said, man, you make it easy for me, because I know him. I know what he does. I know what he's setting up. So it would be a good chess match, because he'll keep you guessing. But the old man still got some up his sleeve. I'd outguess him.
All right, Al. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
Now, John, Hollister, meanwhile, has been fighting through a bit of a slump, haven't they? They've been on a downward trend.
You know, this is something we've seen in the past with them, where they don't get off to these great starts, and part of it is the schedule they have. They schedule a brutal non-league season, and then they get in the league and they stumble a little bit. I don't know if they're banged up or whatnot, but come November, they start to play their best football, as we noticed last year when they went out and won a CCS Division I title. We were in November, and they're playing a little bit better now, having come off their best effort of the season with a 48-point outburst against Monte Vista.
Seaside, now they've made some changes since early in the season. They've got a new quarterback, and he's looked good so far. Huh?
Well, he did in his first start last week, or 2 weeks ago against Salinas, and that's Lorenzo Johnson. He did come in the second half against Aptos and really struggled.
Yeah.
And I think some of that was he just wasn't quite ready. You know, they waited a couple more weeks, brought him in to start against Salinas, and he looked sharp. The thing that Lorenzo does that I haven't seen a lot from any quarterback right now is he extends plays, and he'll kind of come out of the pocket, and you think he's going to get sacked, and something happens, all of a sudden there he is open, and he kind of enables his receivers to get open a little bit longer, gives them a little more time, I should say.
And one of those receivers is probably one of the best in the county, and Ronnie Turner.
He might be the best player in the county. I mean, we don't realize this guy punts, he runs back punts. He also is a DB where he had a pick six against Salinas. But yeah, his position is as a receiver. At 6'4", kind of a smaller version of Calvin Johnson, maybe the Lions.
Boy.
I mean, the guy can go up and catch anything. They throw a lot of balls up in the air. Why teams don't double him is beyond me, and don't put a 5'8" guy on him. He's 6'4". But Ronnie also has what I call Jerry Rice speed. It's deceptive. I mean, he doesn't look fast in a flat-out race, but when the football's in the air, there's nobody faster.
Well, let's hear more from Ronnie Turner.
So Ronnie, when you go up for a pass, is there a feeling that no one's going to catch up at you?
A little. There's a rush in me to go up, and that's my natural instinct, just to jump up and get the ball.
Yeah. Now you've dealt with two quarterbacks this year. Obviously, each one has a different way of throwing the ball. Are you starting to build some chemistry now with Lorenzo, who took over the job 2 weeks ago?
I've had a connection with Lorenzo. It's just Chris was in there the first time, and I had a connection with Chris too, also a great quarterback. But then Lorenzo jumped in and starting to make some plays for us, and we all have connection with them.
Do they throw the ball differently though?
Not really.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. What's better, burning an opponent on a deep route or leaping over two defenders for a catch?
I say leaping over two defenders on a catch.
Because
It's just the rush, and it makes it look better.
Okay. Now, you told me after the Salinas game that you thought the biggest difference from a week earlier in that Palma loss was focus. Did it take that Palma loss for me a light to go on for this team?
It did. Once we lost to Palma, we just got our heads straight and came to practice and worked hard for next week.
Ronnie, in evaluating San Benito, who you play on Friday, what do they do that maybe concerns you? What do you know about them?
I just know that they're a physical team and they're ready to play.
Now, we don't talk a lot about your defense, but that's obviously something you play very well. You had a pick six 2 weeks ago. Do you see yourself as a defensive player or an offensive player?
I can see myself on either side of the ball, whatever is best for me.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you also punt, you also run back kicks, punts, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, all of that, yeah.
Any preference?
No, I'll play anything, wherever coaches need me.
Hey, before we get out of here, Ronnie, last year you guys won 11 straight before you lost your first game, and obviously it came in the postseason. This year this team has 3 losses, but is it different than last year? Because it seems like this team is starting to hit its stride, and you want to be playing your best football in November.
Not really much of a difference from last year. Just slow start, but now we're starting to pick it up.
Yeah. So similar team, just because it is different. There's different players, but is that chemistry there right now?
The chemistry's there, definitely there.
For a long run in the postseason. Yes. All right, thanks, Ronnie.
So, John, which Seaside team do you think is going to show up this week?
Well, I asked Coach Avila that too, and he kind of just shrugged his shoulders.
He doesn't know either.
I mean, the hope is we're going to see what we saw against Salinas. You know, there's two things that are ironic about these teams. These are two physical teams, maybe two of the more physical teams in our area. So it's going to be a smack type of game. I mean, they're going to hit each other. And also, these are two teams that play on grass, which not very many teams play on grass anymore. I think San Benito will struggle a little bit in defending that pass. If they don't put a rush on Seaside, it could be a long night for them. At the same time, San Benito runs the ball over 300 yards last week against Monte Vista. As we know, Seaside has struggled in defending the run this year, although they did a good job against Salinas. So that, to me, may be the key. Can they stop the run?
Now, speaking of Salinas, they face probably a make-or-break game against Palma this week. They've struggled on and off. They play Palma at home, but Salinas hasn't been very good at home.
No, they haven't. In fact, dating back to last year, they're 1-4 at home. I mean, they did beat San Benito earlier this year, and I thought maybe they got off the schneid a little bit, but then they struggled against Seaside 2 weeks ago. And I think it had a little bit of a snowball effect the following week because they didn't play well against Monterey. They've been outscored 68-17 in their last 2 games.
And they're sitting right now at 2-2, 4-4 overall, but 2-2, they fall to 2-3. I mean, we talked about it last week. Could they fall out of the playoff race?
You know, I don't think so. And this has been Salinas' pattern the last 5 years. I mean, they're right around 500. And Steve Goodgabuddy is another coach who will tell you, you know what, we want to be playing our best football in November. And that has been their tradition over the last 5 years in making the playoffs and reaching the CCS Division I semifinals. You know, if they win one more game, they're probably in the playoffs. I think 5 wins gets them in the playoffs. And I do believe they will win one more game. I don't know if it's this week.
We've been talking about Palma a lot on this show because we watched them fall to 0-3. They haven't lost since then. They're 4-3. Brandon Oliveras over 1,000 yards rushing. How do you see their progress right now? Are they getting better, or are they at their peak right now?
They are getting better. I don't think they're at their peak. Again, there was this one reporter that told everybody to kind of hold off on those eulogies. Palma was going to be fine.
Right.
And here they are, have won 4 straight, as you mentioned. You know, the thing is people forget they were in that game against Carmel. I know we've talked about this before, and they were in that game against St. Joe down to the 4th quarter. So that record, you know, is a little misleading. It could easily be 6-1 instead of 4-3, but it's not, and that's the bottom line. But they are playing better. I don't think they've hit their peak yet. I think Mitch Kidd, the quarterback, is still building some chemistry with those receivers. We saw a little bit with that in Seaside 2 weeks ago. And Brandon is just a horse. I mean, he's threatening the school rushing record right now, and he seems like he gets stronger as the game goes on. You know, 20 carries isn't enough for him. He needs 30, 35 carries.
Yeah, and I'll give Oliveras his due, but I've been thinking about it. That offensive line is actually, traditionally, they are very good. They get off the ball well, and they keep getting off the ball in the 4th quarter. So it's like they get stronger as the game goes along, too.
And, you know, the one thing, they're getting better. You know, I mean, he got a lot of hard-earned yards early in the season, but now they're starting to open some holes for him, and he's getting, 5, 6, 7 yards a crack.
All right. So good kind of mesh of great offensive line, great running back.
Well, and that's been Palma's tradition for the most part during this 30-year playoff run. I mean, nothing's changed right now. You know, the thing with Salinas, though, and I know they don't want to hear this, but I really believe Palma's in their head a little bit. I mean, they have not beaten Palma in 11 years, and it goes back 30-plus years since the last time they beat them at the pit.
Let's look now at the Pacific Division. Last week I hyped up how Alvarez against North Salinas was going to be for the title, but I guess it's going to be Alvarez against Gilroy for the title this week.
Well, not necessarily.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of variables still complaining to the Pacific Division, and North High is still in this thing. It needs help now. It actually needs Gilroy to beat Alvarez, and then North Salinas can come back and beat Gilroy, and then you could have a three-way tie for that title, which is interesting because the Pacific Division is only allotted 1 playoff team automatic.
Okay.
Now, they'll get more. They got 3 last year, and I think they'll get 3 this year, and if these teams all play well down the stretch, I think they'll make the playoffs. But essentially, you're right. If Alvarez wins this game, they lock up essentially no worse than a share of their first title in 11 years.
Does Alvarez feel like a team of destiny here, especially after winning that nail-biter last week?
Well, and it's been that way all year for them. Remember, they came back in the 4th quarter to beat a then-undefeated Hillsdale team, and then they rallied to beat Christopher in Gilroy, which is ironically where this game will be played on Friday, 3 weeks ago. So they've had some nail-biters, so you can't sit there and say that this team isn't battle-tested.
Right. Now they face a running back who has almost 2,000 yards rushing. How do they stop him?
Well, no one has yet.
Right.
Then again, I'm not sure who Gilroy's played yet. I mean, we're going to find out a lot about Gilroy and this league over the next 2 weeks. I mean, Brandon Boyd, though, is a guy that is getting attention from a lot of Division II schools right now. And he is a little like Oliveras in that he's kind of a horse. I mean, he runs all day. He had 425 all-purpose yards last week in their win. Yeah, I mean, he had 175 yards in kickoff returns. But the thing about Boyd is his worst game of the year is like a 218-yard rushing effort. He's had 3 games with over 300 yards rushing.
That's incredible.
So, I mean, Alvarez does have its hands full. And I think they may look at it and say, we're going to give you your yards. We'll contain you a little bit, but we're not going to let you beat us.
Looking now to the MTAL, this Saturday, King City against Stevenson. King City in the race for that for a possible CCS playoff?
Well, if they ran the table, they would make the playoffs.
Okay.
Again, that would include beating Stevenson this week and Pacific Grove a week later. So it's not an easy road for them. They've got some barriers in their path. But I do think 3 teams could come out of the MTL if that scenario unfolded. And King City is playing well right now. And as I mentioned earlier, I think defense has become their identity right now. I mean, defense saved that game against Soledad last week. Defense produced 2 touchdowns and win over Monte Vista about a month ago. So, their defense is starting to play probably as well as it's been in the last 10 years.
Going back to the MBL in the Gavilan division, Monterey, who looked really good last week, they visit Alisal. Could this be a trap game for Monterey with Seaside on the schedule in 2 weeks?
I don't think so. I think they learned a lot from that Palma loss 3 weeks ago. I mean, to me, that team grew up a lot after the game. I know Coach Newton took the blame for that loss, but I think these kids took the responsibility upon themselves. Say, hey, we're better than this. And that was a 4th quarter lead. That was a game they had won for the 2nd straight year. They let it slip away against Palma. And I think they've really learned, and they've actually played well the last 3 weeks.
Switching sports now, cross country, it's Championship Saturday at Toro Park, I understand.
It is for the Monterey Bay League's Pacific and Gavilan division. It sounds kind of funny that we're barely into November and we're already talking about championships in the sport, but the Gavilan division is really interesting this year because of all the changes thanks to the Equity League. I mean, it's stacked in the boys. I mean, you look at Salinas, Alisal, North County, Seaside, and San Benito. Any one of those 5 teams on a good day could win this thing for the boys.
How about the girls?
The girls is also balanced. I mean, Alisal beat Salinas in the city meet, but then Salinas turned around and won the center meet 2 weeks later.
Oh, wow.
So, and then you got to look at San Benito as well, and North County won a center meet about a month and a half ago. So that's what you want. That's what they wanted with this Equity League. It's just going to be, I think one of the keys is they're going to be running in the morning. And, a lot of meets are in the afternoon, so we'll see who wakes up early enough.
Okay. And then it's league championships this week, and then do we go and start tapering towards the CCS? Or
2 weeks later, it's 2 weeks from Saturday to be the CCS championships, which I do believe is at Crystal Springs this year. The MTL finals will be the following Thursday, and that's wide open right now too. Pacific Grove and Santa Catalina in the girls, and Pacific Grove and King City in the boys. Edgar Bernier of King City right now is running unbelievable.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Volleyball-wise, we've got a big matchup coming up, and that's down at King City, right?
Yeah, which if you're Carmel, you probably say, I don't want to go all the way down there.
Right.
But it's a rematch of a game earlier this year where King City actually shut out Carmel in 3, swept them, and that kind of was their, I don't want to say wake-up call, but a signature win, I guess is a better word, where all of a sudden people are saying, hey, it's not just Catalina and Carmel, King City's back. And Debbie Hudson's done just a magnificent job in her return to the head coaching job. I mean, nobody had King City in the thick of this thing, and essentially if they beat Carmel on Thursday, and I do like their chances at home with that big crowd, I mean, they're going to clinch no worse than a share of their first title in 6 years.
Wow, okay. Also, girls golf was this week. We had the CCS championships at Rancho Cañada. Chloe Corvo from Santa Catalina, she shot a 73, and she's advancing on to the NorCal championships.
Keep in mind too, Dave, that we have the Monterey Bay League water polo tournament coming up next Monday.
Ah, all right. Our boss will be happy about that.
The Monterey County Herald, news at your fingertips 24/7. With the Herald newspaper, website, and mobile apps, you get local, national, and international news, photos, and video. Local news written by local journalists from the largest news outlet in Monterey County. Breaking news online or directly on your mobile device, including up-to-the-minute weather. The Monterey County Herald is more than talking heads and sound bites. It's award-winning journalism at your fingertips 24/7.
Okay, welcome back. We're here with Tommy Wright, who covers college sports for us. That includes CSUMB and the community colleges, of course. Tommy, it's November, or will be November by the time people are seeing this, and that means college basketball is in the air. CSUMB men have already played a game. It was an exhibition game against University of San Diego.
That's right.
How did they look?
They look pretty good. They hung with San Diego for 2-3 quarters, and even then at the end it was only a 9-point game, so single-digit loss to a Division I team. And this isn't just some random bad Division I team.
Right.
San Diego's previous game, they lost 69-66 in overtime to St. Mary's in the West Coast Conference semifinals. So, so I mean, this is a team that's pretty good. And so for the Otters to be able to hang with them for that long, I think it's a pretty good sign of things to come for them.
But is this going to be a challenging year for them since they lost so many players to graduation?
Yeah, it will be interesting. They did lose a lot of players. They lost their top scorer, Brandon Ward, who averaged 30 13.5 points per game. And I think one of their biggest losses might have been Kevin Loosedale up in the middle. He was their leading rebounder and one of their best players and good leader, really good all-around guy from what I'd heard. They also lost one of their most versatile players in Derek Anderson. So there is going to be a lot of turnover, but a lot of the new guys did show some promise in their exhibition opener there. Ryan Nitz, he's a transfer from Chaffey College, which is a JC in Rancho Cucamonga. He led the team with 14 points. Not a newcomer, but freshman of the year from last year, CCAA freshman of the year, Alex Vertigue, who is kind of he pulled things together late in the season. He started getting more minutes, and he actually got close to leading the team in points. He ended up with 12, so there's a lot of promise there. There's a few other guys. Another transfer, Devin Murphy, who's another former junior college guy. He had 11 points, 4 assists. Freshman forward Isaiah Smith finished with 10 points. So there's a lot of new faces, but it seems like these guys are really coming together.
Now, what's next for the Otters?
So next they're going to be playing San Jose State. This is another exhibition game. It's going to be up at the Event Center in San Jose. That's November 4th, next Monday.
Okay.
That'll be another test to kind of see where they're at against a high-level team. That should be interesting.
And then when do they start the regular season?
So they'll be starting the regular season on November 19th. That's going to be up in San Francisco, up at the Academy of Art.
Oh, okay.
And so that should be a good game.
Now, the women are going through a big transition after losing their longtime coach and very successful coach. Well, long time for a successful coach. And they have a new coach.
Well, long time relative for CSUMB for, a fairly new university. Yeah, Renee Jimenez, she took the Otters to 4 straight NCAA tournaments. So that's going to be a big transition. From what I've heard, Renee Jimenez, she was a defense first coach. From what I'm hearing about Carrie Nakamoto, the new Otters coach, she has more of an emphasis on the offense. So that's going to be interesting to see how they kind of change their game transition. Nakamoto, we were talking about San Diego. She was actually an assistant there for the women's team.
Right. She played high school ball at Midi in San Jose.
Yeah, that's right. She was a great player up there. So it's going to be interesting to see how she does there. She doesn't have the head coaching experience, and this team is losing a lot of senior leadership. So it's going to be interesting to see if some players on that team step up to try and help out that coach in some leadership roles as they kind of try and find their feet.
You talked about Jimenez and the defense first kind of philosophy, and it felt like at times they did struggle offensively, especially middle of the season. Do you think the new emphasis on the offense plus the hangover effect from the defense will combine to get a real complete package?
I think part of Renee's emphasis on the defense was her personnel. Jessica Fontenette in particular, she was a really strong defensive player. She got better on offense as she continued into her senior year, but she wasn't necessarily an offensive star. Stephanie Cordial was a great shooter, and she was a great leader. It's going to be tough for them to lose her. And then Brittany Jefferson was probably their best player in the center, and she was probably their best player all around, both scoring and on defense. So it's going to be interesting now that they've lost them, but they do have some good returning players. CCAA newcomer of the year, Nikki Beckman, will be back. So she was a really strong guard for them, big part of that rotation. One interesting spot for us locally here is Seaside High alumna Victoria Dorn. She's coming off of ACL surgery. Right. She had a red shirt last year, so she's going to be jumping back into that rotation. So it will be interesting to see how they blend the offense and the defense together. I was taking a look, it just came out today, the CCAA coaches poll, and apparently the other coaches aren't thinking it's going to gel together too well.
Really?
They picked the Otters to finish tied for 9th out of 12 teams after they were won a game in the NCAA tournament last year. So I guess they're just, the uncertainty there is leaving a lot of questions for some of them. But yeah, I think there's still a lot to look forward to. Starting guard and Holly Holcomb will be back. Senior forward Ashley Morgan, who was a big part of the rotation, will be back. So there are a lot of question marks, and that's really where that program's at right now.
Well, one thing, we should circle our calendar for when San Berdue and CSUMB match up, and that game's going to be televised, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Renee Jimenez is going to be returning to the kelp bed. that's a game that's going to be on CBS Sports Network.
And that'll be February 15th.
Yeah. So that should be interesting. We'll see where both of those teams are at that point. So yeah, Renee Jimenez, she stayed in the conference, so there's going to be some interesting matchups there.
Now let's do a quick check-in on some of the fall sports at CSUMB. How's the men's soccer team doing?
They had a heartbreaking loss over the weekend to UC San Diego. That's number 18th ranked team, so it is a good team, but they were up 1-0 with only 10 minutes left, and then they gave up two goals in regulation to end up losing that game. That was a tough loss. If they could have won that, they would have been in good position. They're now for the first time out of first place and out of the postseason spot there for the CCAA tournament. So I would say the Otters probably have to win their last two games here against San Francisco State and Chico State to try and get back into that playoff picture.
Now let's check in with the CSUMB volleyball team.
Things are a little bit brighter there. CSUMB rallied from 2 sets down to beat Chico State over the weekend. A couple of big games from the same names we're always saying.
Yeah.
Julia Ashen and Jessica Malcolm, but give Jessica Malcolm credit. She finished ahead of Ashen in kills in that game.
Okay.
She had 20 to Ashen's 18. But with only 9 matches left, CSUMB only needs 2 more wins to tie the team's record of 15.
Okay. Well, let's turn now to JC football, and that's Hartnell with a big win against Cabrillo last week to go to 2-0 in Coast Conference play.
Yeah, I keep saying it. It kind of seems like a repeat of last year where Hartnell's pulling away from everyone, but you still have MPC, and in this case, it's San Jose City College. Last year it was Cabrillo. They're kind of just lurking right behind. So Hartnell, they had a solid all-around game in their win over Cabrillo over the weekend. DeAndre Mann, all I really have to say is just DeAndre Mann, because this guy just keeps going off. He's back to leading the state overall in rushing for the season. He broke the 1,000-yard mark. He's at 1,060 yards for the season already. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And this was his biggest workload of the year, so that's an important thing to note. This is a guy that's dealt with some injuries, particularly last year, but there's been some nagging stuff a little bit this year. But 37 carries, he's got to be in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
And he had 3 catches for 62 yards. So referring back to last year, what happened was Hartnell lost to MPC in that final game, and MPC stole that bowl bid from them.
And MPC is in position to do that again this year so far, right, with their victory over West Valley this weekend.
Yeah, this is a team that keeps on improving game to game. Andrew Ludenbach was 11-23 for 240 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. That's a big thing. They continue to be efficient. They're not turning over the ball, and that's what you have to do, this type of team, to win. But I think by far the most impressive performance on the offense was Sean Johnson Bay. He ran for 147 yards on 23 carries, and this is for an MPC team that basically their run game was non-existent to start the season. They had a couple games, I think, where they had negative rushing totals. For him to break out like that, that's huge to really give this offense another dimension.
Some balance.
There. Exactly. But to me, I would probably give the game ball to the defense. This was by far MPC's best performance on defense. They held West Valley at only 12 points. They hadn't even came close to that low of a point total so far this season. In particular, we have James Karasek, a Pacific Grove alum. He had a sack and an interception to go along with 5 tackles. So things really seem to be coming together at the right time there for MPC.
And that does it for Prep Nation this week. Check your local listings where you can watch some prep football action. That was the North Salinas Alvarez game that ended in a thrilling 36-34 victory for Alvarez. Then this Friday, the McCate Vehicle Roadshow is coming to Salinas, where we'll be covering the Salinas Palma game. We'll see you next week.